Hi everybody. I'm going to look at a short match between KiwiCoach and Filipov Anton. I've devised a new system to make my analyses shorter in general. What I do now is I look at the games beforehand and play around with the engine for a couple of hours just to make sure that I know what the mistakes are. And then once I do that, I just kind of ask two questions. Number one, why did the person play this move? And then number two, why is the alternative better? And then a few takeaways here and there. So let's begin with the first match. We have Filipov Anton as white and KiwiCoach as black. We have e5 e6, e4 d6, fe6 fe6, cd6 cd6. So far this is quite standard. Most people play h5 in this position, like most strong players, but Filipov plays e takes d6, which is also popular and kind of the old main line, I would say. But Kiwi has an interesting idea here with h5. So most people play bishop takes d6, but Kiwi goes for h5. I think both moves are good. Like, I don't think one move is clearly better than the other. I mean, objectively speaking, black is winning in both moves, but h5 is definitely a nice idea. We have c5 pretty much forced, c5 bishop takes d6, cd6 queen d6, and f5. Yeah, f5 is logical. It's pretty much forced, I think. After f5, Kiwi makes a slight inaccuracy with knight e7, and it's a very natural move. Like over 90% of strong players would play this move, unless they see something else like queen f8, because queen f8 is probably better than knight e7. Problem with knight e7 is that white has a rare resource with f6, so Filipov missed f6. In this position, white can play f6, and the problem for black is that knight g6 and trying to infiltrate is actually concretely bad for black, all because of fg7, and now there's actually nothing black can do anymore. I mean, he has to go rook g8, but after gh5, rook g7, I guess taking a knight should be winning for white. Yeah, and if the knight moves, then, well, h6. So, knight g6 is pretty much losing for black, and therefore black should go for something else like gf6. And then, well, knight g6 is futile because of g5, so therefore black has to go for like either, I think hg4 really is the only chance, because if knight g8, then still g5 or e5 first and then g5. So we get a position like this, and now black's only chance really is to go for knight f8, knight g6, and infiltrate the king side. Or if white allows it, then black can go for a5 and knight b6 and infiltrate on a4. But it's an unclear position. Like, when I played around with the engine, it seems to think that black is slightly better in general, but it's not so clear. I mean, it's always possible that there are some ideas for white that the engine doesn't see. But either way, it's just too risky for black to play. That's why knight e7 is kind of an inaccuracy. Queen f8 is a good idea because we stop f6 after knight e7. So for example, after a5 there will be knight e7, and I mean, black is objectively winning, but the more interesting question is, how trivial is the win? And that's not so clear. It's kind of not determined at this point. But definitely a good game for black. So 97 e3. So e3 is a mistake simply because it misses f6. I mean, yeah, f6 can be hard to see if you are thinking in autopilot. And so I think a takeaway there could be, whenever the opponent has a threat like taking and going here, you want to turn off kind of autopilot mode. That would be my takeaway. I mean, it's important to find f6 in this position. The e3, hg4, hg4, ef5, ef5, bishop f5, h3, bishop c8, a5, b6. I mean, none of these moves are really like forced for black. There's a lot of good moves. These are good enough. After this trades on a6, black plays b5, which is great. And now black's plan should be to attack the queen side. So if white doesn't play a4, then black can take and go back and play a5. Something like that. However, white does play a4 in this position. And now black has to think concretely again, because what I said earlier is that one of the takeaways is that when the opponent has a threat, you have to think more concretely and turn off autopilot mode. Well, here white has like kind of a threat of taking on b5, and a natural looking move would be bishop a6, which was played in the game, but it's a mistake because after a5, black no longer has any attack on the queen side. I mean, what black has to do here is attack the queen side, and most normal way to do that is to, first of all, you have to take on a4, and then next, I guess, queen a6. Not the bishop, but the queen, because queen attacks a4, kind of forcing white to go like b3 or a5. But after b3, there's like bishop d7, a5, knight c6, and white has serious problems. In fact, black has a concrete way to force an infiltration. So a3 is pretty much forced, but after this really strong move, rook b8, white has no way to stop the breakthrough. For example, after e2, like, there's this rook b5 point. That's the point in general, is that the rook will get to a5. And if white tries to stop rook a5 with rook b5 with a move like a4 or c4, well, we can always take on b4. So for example, like after a4, there will be knight b4, rook b4, and white is busted. Rook b3 is a threat, and otherwise queen a5 and rook a4 is decisive. Something like that. I mean, for example, after a2, I think black can play this, kind of threatening rook a4, so they have to go b3. But then, yeah, I think as black, I think the simplest is to take on a4 with the bishop. Or, yeah, doesn't really matter if you take with the bishop or rook, I think. Yeah, let's take with the bishop, and then this, and after a3, we just break through, and that should be completely winning for black, just because white doesn't have much space. I mean, yeah, the engine sort of agrees, I guess. Anyway, with all that in mind, like, bishop a6 is just a clear mistake because white plays a5, closing the queen side, and then black has no attack anywhere for the time being, and so white will be able to repair his space deficit by developing slowly over time, slowly accumulating space. So it's actually a very solid position for white, and a relatively even game, objectively speaking. Maybe, I don't know who's winning objectively, but it's a very solid game for white either way. But AB5 by Filipov is also a clear mistake. I mean, I think after AB5, bishop B5, Filipov may have either missed that A4 doesn't force the bishop back, like black can play A5, maybe black can even play queen A6. I mean, if the bishop would move back, this would be a good position for white. I think white would just play like A3, although that does look risky because after some sacrifices there could be a build up on the A file with only one A pawn. I'm not too sure. But maybe white can play. What can white play? Let's say white plays F4 and. Or how about A2 actually? I like A2 because after A5 I can safely play B5 because if black takes and pushes the pawn, then this looks playable for white. Maybe A3 would be even better, actually. A3, that way, after the same idea, there would be a pawn on A3 supporting the pawn on B4, which would therefore allow for white to play C4 with very good looking position. Problem, of course, is black doesn't have to move the bishop. Black can play A5 immediately, and now black is just winning. So after these trades, A2 is forced, and now black has concrete breakthrough with queen B8. It's kind of a concrete idea. Basically, well, we threaten this pawn, so they have to go like C4, but after C4, there's rook A2. And now, the fact that this breakthrough is like so quick, happens so quickly, means that white has no chances for counterplay. In the game, Kiwi played pawn takes c3, but there's a couple practical problems with this move. I mean, it's a natural move if you expect to move a queen like the next move or two, because queen was looking at b4, right? But problem with this move is that it allows white's pawns to develop more quickly. White's center pawns for potential chances of counterplay. I mean, it's more correct to just if you don't see this queen b8 rook takes a2 idea, then I think still a move like rook a5 is better in general. Keeping the pawn on b4, which kind of inhibits the development of the pawns on the b, c, and d files a little bit. So that's just a nuanced technical point. But after dc3, I mean, objectively, black is still winning. We have some normal moves like rook a5, c4, queen b8, e4, queen a8, d5, rook a2, ba2, queen a2. Filipov plays c5, which is helping black a little bit because there's also queen a5 if black wants to play it. And that would be a simple way to win. Kiwi goes with queen b1, which is probably good enough. Before I continue, I want to show an interesting idea that I discovered. So first, white starts with e5, and after queen a1, d6, and knight c8, c5, queen a5, you might think that white is forced to play c4. That would be the natural move in this position. But white has b6. And if knight b6, then b4. A very important move. You don't want to take this pawn because of queen e5. But after b4, white complicates the game considerably. And now queen b6 would be a mistake for black because it takes long for black to enter the back rank again. So black should find queen e1 in this position, and then black is objectively winning. It's just a little bit harder to convert, I believe. So yeah, Filipov should go for like e5, d6, c5, b6 idea. After c5, there's just not much firepower, you could say. Queen b1, b6, king d7, this is fine. d6, knight c8, this is still fine. I mean, Kiwi had specific plan of taking here, and so Filipov goes with e5. After knight b6, cb6, and queen c1, e3, queen d1, c4, queen d3, f4, queen b3. I think there's not much left to look at. It's a relatively straightforward win for black. Do have to be a little bit careful after c5, queen c4. You'd have to be careful not to play something like queen d5, maybe still objectively winning for black, but white can just play b4 here. So queen c4 is kind of important here. And after this, we see rook e8. It's a very smart move. I like it. h5, queen b4, h6, gh6, gh6, queen c5, h4, queen b6, g5, queen b1, h5, queen h7. Intuitively, this move looks awkward because the queen loses some squares and the queen is a long-range piece, so usually she wants to have like a lot of squares, but it's actually just a winning fortress for black, because we have a king our king is covering the D and E files, and the queen is covering the G and H files, and so with the rook's involvement on e8, like I think black is under full control. h5, king e6, it's a smart move. Potentially black will put the rook on f8 next. In fact, he just does that. You can also take here. It's pretty clear that after g6, queen f5, black is winning really quickly. So after rook f8, we have f3, queen h8, and the rest is trivial. And it's game over. Alright, so we can move on to the second game. So here Kiwi has white and Filipov has black. And Kiwi opens with a5, d6, cd6, ed6, d5, c6. c6 is an unusual move, I would say. I mean, a good number, maybe 80% of strong players prefer a6 here, but c6 is probably pretty good as well. We have bc6, bc6, but now the thing is white loses space on the queen side because white can never put another pawn on like b5 without sacrificing the a5 pawn, and also black will be able to control b5 and to build a fortress, so it's better for white to keep a pawn on b5 just because white cannot put another pawn on b5 later. So white has to go for something like d4 or maybe a4, or maybe even taking with a d pawn instead, because at least white can feasibly put another pawn on d5 later. Although I would consider other ideas like putting a pawn on e5 and d4, something like that. But bc6 is a positional mistake. I think just kind of a matter of positional understanding. It's like, yeah, if you see that you can't put another pawn on b5, then you you should you should feel like this move is wrong somehow. So bc6, bc6, d4, f6, a4, h6. So black is building a fortress. g6, cd5, cd5, knight d7, c4, a6, c3, queen c7, d3, rook a7, and d2, bishop e7, c2, bishop b7. Yeah, I mean, what to say? Like, so far, black is doing well. I mean, black could have put a pawn on h5 in any of the previous moves, but I mean, it's not required, but I would prefer to have a pawn on h5, but it's probably a matter of taste, I guess. a3, rook a8, a2, rook a7, and now Kiwi breaks with e5. It's definitely the best try. I mean, black is winning this position, but I think white's best chance is to play in the center. Like, generally, when you don't know what to do, generally the best answer is to play in the center. e5, fe5. So after the trades on e5 and black takes the knight, f4, knight d7, we have this position. And now I have a simple plan for black, which is knight b8, because I want to play queen d8 and look at the d5 pawn with both my queen and bishop. Plus, I like to look at this diagonal as well. And then that would be my simple plan. But Filipov does like all this other stuff, like after e4, knight f6, f3, rook a8, e3, castle. I would never castle, personally. I think it's okay to castle, but it does force black to find kind of non-universal moves, I guess you could say. But anyway, d4, queen d8, f3, rook a7, d3, rook a8, e2, rook a7. I mean, white is slowly having chances again because black made like several micro inaccuracies. Like, the knight should be here so that the queen and bishop work together on the d5 pawn. And then, yeah, again, I wouldn't recommend castling. And that's about it. Yeah, the knight should probably be back on g8 or even like e8 potentially. It's good to keep your pieces kind of far back so that white cannot kick with tempo as easily. e5, knight d5, cd5, bishop d5, e4, bishop c6, h5, knight b8, e3, rook d7, h4, bishop a8. And now I would evaluate this position to be unclear because originally black was winning, but black played several micro inaccuracies that allowed white to get a comfortable position that we see here right now. And if white plays the correct move, which would be like g5, then as long as black does not take 3 times on g5, like black plays something else, maybe bishop b7, I'm not too sure. Yeah, bishop b7 looks natural here. Maybe black should have played bishop b7 on the previous move so that he can play knight c6 next with the pawn on a6 protected. If black does something like that, then, with the bishop on b7, knight c6, I think black is still doing fine. It's an unclear position. Kiwi blunders with b5, and the reason this is a blunder, well, first of all, let's just explain why Kiwi played b5. Well, Kiwi told me personally that his idea was to distract black's queen so that white can play g5, and he also said that he missed the bishop takes a3 idea. So after queen a5, like bishop a3 is just deadly because white's pawn on a2 cannot support the pawn on b2. The white pawn should be on a1, I guess. Although, if the white pawn were on a1, then you could still play bishop a3 and then go back with bishop to b4 and break through that way. So I guess it doesn't matter if white's pawn is on a1 or a2. Anyway, uh, it's kind of a natural idea that you want to distract the queen and play g5, but one of the problem is that after g5, well, obviously black will take here, but even if black just goes back queen d8, well, you cannot avoid this pressure on g5, so therefore, in the previous move, white should accept that black will always have this pressure on g5 and just play g5 early on, like here, right? So after b5, Filipov plays ab5, which is a mistake because now we get rid of this a pawn and we can play b4, stopping bishop a3. If we go back, so without taking on b5, well, black will just take on a5, and now there's no more move with b4 because queen will take here, and if white takes here, then there's a really fast motif with knight c7 and knight b5 to break through. And it comes quickly, that's the key. The fact that it comes quickly makes all the difference, because time is one of the key factors in a position where black attacks the opposite side that white counterattacks. So after the mistake with AB5, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a natural response, but it's just not the best. So AB5, Queen A5, A4, missing Bishop A3. Yeah, that's all. After Bishop A3, black is winning, but Kiwi did manage to win this game. So we have BA3, Queen C3, G5, Queen E1, G4, Queen B1, and now GH6. And for some reason, Filipov goes with Queen C2, which is a losing blunder. And I had like kind of two theories why he played this move. The first theory I had in mind was that Filipov just wanted to delete the C file. And the second theory is that Filipov wanted to undermine the E4 point with the queen and bishop construction, although that would still be possible for black to do after GH6. And now white cannot play C4 because there's queen D3, I guess. Although you might be worried about like D5 in this position, but yeah, still objectively winning for black. I mean, I think I'd go rook D8 here to consider some possibilities like knight D7 or something like that. Although there is E6 in that position, so it's still kind of dangerous, I guess. Maybe that's why Filipov was afraid of this position, because E6, E7 idea can always be dangerous. But yeah, I mean, the comparative outlook is that we don't take back and we play queen c2, and now white can just take on g7 with a very fast attack on the king side. I mean, thing about deleting the C file, the reason why it's not so effective is kind of, for me, it's more of an intuitive thing. I mean, I've studied some variance bot games where it willingly gives some files in exchange for like a strong attack, basically. And here, I feel like that's what we get here. But anyway, after HG, Rook G7, F6, Queen D3, Kiwi makes a mistake with G5, and normally if you are in time trouble, then you will make these kind of natural moves, these natural mistakes, and you can't be faulted for that, like if you're in time trouble. But here, Kiwi had 52 seconds on the clock at this point, so I think he should have spent some time to consider whether FG7 is winning for white, and if it is, then just choose that move because the fact that it's forcing means that there's less to consider. After G5, the problem is like there's bishop takes. Bishop takes E4, and now after taking the rook, yeah, white is kind of in Zugzwang. I mean, actually, I guess it's still winning for white. It's just not as clear. The computer recommends G4 here, and after some computer moves with King G8 and H3, Queen H1, F5, Queen H3, H6, Queen G4, F6, Rook D8, F4, Knight D7. Yeah, it's a lot of work for white to prove something, I think. Maybe white can play like A5 in this position, but still. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't go for G5. I would go for takes. It's, after this, I can just play F5 with no problems. If black goes for this kind of thing, then rook F5. I mean, this is very clear for white. Very clear that it's winning for white, I would say. And we can check the engine, but yeah. Maybe there's a better way for white, like playing F6 immediately looks even better, I think. Because there is a chance they go for rook F6 and then this is actually very solid for white. It's really hard for black to stop this avalanche. But okay. Anyway, G5's not the end of the world. After rook B7, there's E6, and looks like white is winning again because rook B7 is just too passive, I think. So rook A7 and then F5. This is a key mistake because because bishop E4, right? I mean, F5 is natural, it prepares F7, F6, but the problem with this way of thinking is that it ignores the possibility for black to sacrifice both rooks to clean out some space. For example, after bishop E4, B6 is played, which is making things even worse for white. If white plays something like F7, then black can take twice. And then this position is not so clear. What should white play? I think white should play F4, maybe. I know it looks weird, like it allows queen e3, but this is probably not so easy for black necessarily. And if queen f5, then yeah, what should white do? Like h6 or something? Okay, maybe this is winning for black after all. Like I feel like I don't see like a strong plan for white. I mean, there's like b4, a5, but still doesn't look sufficient. But after b6, white is simply allowing bishop f5. The Kiwi says that bishop f5 is hard to see, but I don't actually agree because after ba7, I mean, white just loses a lot of space. I mean, even these queenside pawns just lost a lot of space. Like, space is really important in Horde. It's more important than material. It's almost like after this position, it's almost like white shouldn't even take the rook, assuming that he could support his space. But he can't, so he should take the rook, but still, it's just clearly winning for black. b6, rook b7, f7, king h8. So king h8 is a key blunder, and this is one of the blunders that I don't understand, because I think taking with the rook is like easy to see. Maybe Filipov just wanted to anticipate something like f6 and then take here or something like that. But I mean, after fe4, queen e4. Okay, I think maybe Filipov just thought that by going king h8, we kind of have this position and we stop queen e6. I mean, we stop f6 because of queen e6. Problem with that way of thinking is there is this move h6. And after rook f7, I mean, now this position should be winning for white. Yeah, I mean, it's already g7, g6, and that's what Kiwi played. Yeah, because after takes, there will be a promotion, and it's game over. If black would take here, then we would get kind of the same position that we analyzed before, where I suggested f4 in this position, but it's definitely winning for black, especially now that white wasted a move with b6, basically. Yeah, I mentioned that bishop f5 is winning for black, but rook b7 is also winning for black. I mean, it's actually, that's a move I would play as black because it's safer, I guess. Unless you see that after bishop f5, like you just clear out the center pawns. Yeah, both moves are just clearly winning. So with that in mind, we can move on to the last game. And Kiwi has black. Okay, so Filipov has white, Kiwi has black, and Filipov opens with h5, e6, e5, ef5, gf5, f6, gf6, g6. This is relatively standard. If we go back a couple moves, instead of move 3 f6, normally you see like move 3 d6, kind of the most natural move because it's a center move, like a move that moves a pawn in the center, and it also attacks f5 with the bishop. But f6 is actually also a strong alternative. In fact, back in 2022, maybe I was already developing some ideas for black here, some kind of fortress ideas where black keeps a pawn on d7, and it's really interesting, I guess. So gf5, f6, gf6, g6. I mean, the normal move is like knight f6, but g6 is actually good. But after g6, it's a little bit scary because Variance Bot has a lot of success with a scary move for white, which is, well, I should say scary plan, which is taking twice on g6, and then after knight f6 playing f5. Obviously, taking the knight looks really bad because there will be queen g6, bishop e7, rook h6, queen h7 with a forced infiltration. But Variance Bot will play f5 in this position. And like I said, Variance Bot has a lot of success. If you want to learn this opening for white, I guess the best way is to look at Variance Bot games because it requires a lot of bravery to play this position with white. Like, serious bravery, because black can force an infiltration on the king side, but white has like some interesting counterplay on the king side and the center. Filipov goes for g4. This is kind of a more normal move in my opinion. After g4, gf5, we have g5, kind of the first mistake for white. Like, it's kind of a natural move because we support f6, but after h6, we're kind of forced to play g6, and now it's starting to look uncomfortable for white just with this gaping hole in the king side. Instead of g5, white should consider, well, what I would play for white is kind of d5 with the idea of c6. And I already have a little variation I put. So c6, d5, fe5, knight f6, ef6, queen f6. And although it's true that black threatens to take 3 times on c6, and that would give white a very bad position, thing is, white can actually just take here and play some moves like c5 and c6 in the future. And white has an interesting game here, in my opinion. It definitely looks critical. I mean, even if black forces a win somehow, which he probably does, I mean, you can't really avoid that. It's still critical, right? So g5, h6, g6, knight f6, ef6, queen f6, g3. And now, since white cannot dominate the center, plus there's gaping holes on the king side, it follows that black should have a winning fortress. So I managed to find some fortress idea in my analysis at home, starting with d6. And my basic setup is to put the queen on e7 and play knight d7, knight f6, like this, and then take on h5, go back, and temporarily control e4, and then play rook g8 to pick up the other pawn. And yeah, it's very important that white has, like, lacking space on the king side, because that makes it unsafe for white to play in the center with e4, because after e4 we have a forced breakthrough. So we take 3 times and we put some pressure like here, and now we have a breakthrough with h4. So after f2, h4, white just cannot avoid a breakthrough on g3. Like, we will sacrifice the rook. Otherwise, after g4, there's like bishop f4, right? Queen h6, rook pulls back, and it's a very clear win for black. Plus, black might be able to take all these pawns and create a second queen, and that would be deadly. So going back, I mean, Kiwi goes for like a5 and plays like some sort of random moves, you could say. Like after this position, Filipov missed a chance to build a solid game for white. So he wasted time with g2. He could have played dc6 and then take here on d6. And the idea is that if black tries to infiltrate the queen side with like a cb5 and a4 to occupy the fourth rank, then it's actually a very solid game for white after knight d7, intending a future knight b6 move. Well, white doesn't have anything to worry about. White can just play c4. If bishop takes, then we take, and we can play c5 here. And if knight b6, then this is deadly. I mean, white is clearly winning. I mean, even if black infiltrates the queen side, white just has too much space, and white will complete his development by then. So the problem with Filipov's move with g2, I guess, is just that it allows black to demineralize white's center just a little bit. I mean, it's not the end of the world for white, but it just gives white a mediocre position where the center will be under lingering pressure for the rest of the game, you could say. So AB4 is fine. The point for black is that we force this kind of position, and then we have a simple plan of queen d8 and knight f6 to take on h5 or to put pressure in the center. And that's exactly what happens. And here Filipov fought for 6 seconds and played d6, which simply misses the hanging threat on e4. After Kiwi takes it, the rest is clear. Yeah, knight f6 is smart. It's better than taking here, I think, because we can take on h5 and then undermine the f4 pawn. After g4 takes, g3, knight f4, it's just game over. If e3 here, then yeah, I mean, bishop d6 is good enough for sure. Or yeah, that's what I would do. It's bishop d6, I think. And take. Yeah, this exactly. Kind of 2 threats. That's good enough. Engine finds knight f4 in this particular position. This I don't understand as much, but it does look good for black because there will be h5. Alright, that concludes this analysis. I think that's all I've got. So hopefully that was interesting and instructive. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next match.